The Spanish flu. The 1918 pandemic, known commonly as the Spanish flu, is regarded as the most deadly pandemic in history. This viral disease is known medically as the H1N1 virus influenza. The Spanish flu affected 1/3 of the world's population, killing about 50 million people, 675,000 of which were Americans. At its height, the Spanish flu took the most casualties during the second wave over the course of just 14 weeks during the fall of 1918. This pandemic was declared over in the summer of 1919, with the exception of Japan officially declaring it over in 1920. Currently, the flu is common in conversation thanks to all that we have learned in 1918. Now described as a bad cold, then was a mystery. It was perceived to be brought by birds from the Chinese soldiers during the First World War. However, there was no appropriation of this whatsoever, as other outbreaks were said to have occurred as well. In Kansas in 1918, it was said that an infectious pathogen jumped species from pigs to humans, causing swine flu. When the war began, the soldiers were eagerly enlisting. They were then sent to train in Kansas. Due to the influx of soldiers, there were not enough properly constructed barracks to house them all, thus leading them to stay in uninsulated tents and other makeshift structures. The virus spread through the soldiers' barracks virulently. Imperative to the narrative was President Woodrow Wilson's legislature just 1 year prior to the outbreak. He passed the Sedition Act, which made it punishable by law to say or publish anything that would negatively affect the efforts of World War I. Because of this, no one really knew what caused the infection. More soldiers were dying during this time due to the flu than they were due to combat. During the war, enemies did not want to reveal that they were battling an epidemic, and because of this, news coverage and public communication about the intensity of this virus was hindered greatly. Spain, who remained neutral in World War I, was also gravely affected by this outbreak, losing nearly 8 million people. Because of their neutrality and high devastation rate, they were broadcasting information about this epidemic freely in their media, where other countries did not speak a word about it. Due to Spain being the first to share out, the name Spanish flu was coined. It is important to note that this does not indicate its origin or overall devastation. In order to avoid public alarm, local authorities refused to reveal the numbers of the affected or deceased people. Additionally, when confronted, authorities claimed that this was like any other cold and lasted no more than 2 months. When the second wave hit in October of 1918, that was impossible to trust. Winning the war was the number one priority for most of the world. The intensity of the government's missteps and lack of proactivity in mitigating this outbreak was the primary perpetrator in the rapid spread of this virus. Fast forward to recent times, the awareness of the flu is as common as any. With all that we now know, we have isolated strains of H1N1 into vaccines that we now receive annually. When the flu initially hit, symptoms of headache, respiratory issues like coughing, and fever were just the tip of the iceberg. Catching the virus was so consequential that bleeding from orifices such as eyes, ears, and mouth, or having sores on your body that would burst at any movement, were also symptoms of this then mystery disease. The medical community quickly responded with socially redirective measures. The concept of a quarantine is not new. Because of the lack of knowledge surrounding the virus, this was the first implemented measure in mitigating the outbreak. As well, public gatherings were lessened. Churches, schools, war support efforts such as parades and rallies were all shut down. Masks were then mandated, and you were issued to stay at home. Any behavior outside of this direction could get you killed by local authorities. Each city's intensity in controlling the spread was heightened at this time. Increased personal hygiene was also strictly enforced. In 1918, the course of treatment was aligned with the treatment of any illness for the time. Enemas, whiskey, and bloodletting were primary methods of treatment. Since the 1930s, we have grown as a medical community in understanding not only transmission, but also the H1N1 virus itself. We now have an abundance of vaccines for multiple strains, as well we are equipped with a wealth of knowledge of the influenza's potential. While it remains a mystery how the virus started, It wasn't until the 1930s that the flu was properly attributed to a virus and isolated for its research. At the time of the 1918 Spanish flu's origination, there were no flu-like vaccines in existence. Over the course of the last 102 years, we have developed many vaccines in order to circumnavigate multiple strains of the flu. We now also understand the mutation potential of this virus and that it comes in waves and when to expect it. This is what we know as the flu season, and we prepare by getting vaccines to protect ourselves. There are many people studying and understanding this strain of the flu, as well as many others similar in their disposition. The 1918 pandemic has led to enormous improvements in public health and safety. As well, the reinforced power of knowledge and communication to the public around transmission and prevention, and within the medical community around awareness and proactivity. The 1918 Spanish flu, as well as the strains to follow, have become so commonly discussed in current times. The 1918 influenza jump-started this conversation, and the flu vaccine is as common as any. Initially, this was extremely scary, and now it's an ordinary topic of conversation. Stay safe, everyone, and don't forget to get your flu shot.